welcome into the offseason. I'm Cassie Carlson alongside Lou Canellis. All right, so my reaction sitting in that press conference room is Caleb Williams handled this very maturely. A second-year quarterback who came out and didn't deny anything that was said in that article, opened up and said this is exactly what happened, owned up to it, but also called it a distraction at the time, which I thought was notable because otherwise it was Ben Johnson answering questions about it last week, his teammates answering questions about it the week before as well. And Caleb Williams is like, yeah, this happened before I came to the Bears on the visit. I met with the Minnesota Vikings. I had a great visit with Kevin O'Connell. He was coach of the year that year, and I was excited about that. Then I came to the Bears, and I think what he was trying to emphasize is that it was hidden in that article that he wanted to come to the Bears after the visit, and he wanted to stress that he wanted to be the quarterback to change the narrative around quarterback play in this city and with this franchise, and he was welcoming that challenge. What was your reaction?
Thank you, Caleb Williams, for coming right out and saying, before I even take a question, I'm going to go out and tell you guys exactly what I feel happened. And he spoke for what, 3 minutes, 55 seconds,
yeah.
4 minutes out there. He told everyone exactly what had happened, what had transpired prior to the NFL draft back in 2024. And as you touched on, Cassie, and I won't repeat what you just said, he admitted everything that we had read in that article. And he said, listen, I'm a young player going into the NFL. I have a father who's a very successful businessman. My parents are my two best friends, so I have the utmost respect for them. And I was going into a situation potentially in Chicago where quarterbacks have not succeeded. And I met a guy, a head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, who's had great success so far in the NFL, coach of the year. And I was intrigued. Wow, it'd be cool to play for him. So I hold no ill will against Caleb Williams. I think for 23 years old, he has been incredibly mature through this entire process. And I think it's one of the reasons why people, media like myself, fans out there, still have confidence in this kid that despite what happened last year, getting sacked 68 times and going through a 5-12 season, he is still going to be a really good quarterback in this league.
Well, I think, too, you say maturity and you liken the leadership qualities that you saw from him speaking to this. And I think that's the importance of him speaking to it just 2 weeks removed from it being released instead of waiting till whenever we might have heard from him, whether it be next week during mandatory minicamp, the week after that, and the final OTA before they break before training camp. Like, get out ahead of it. It always makes it better than to let people continue to talk about it. Because I was reading, a lot of fans consider this a non-story. To me, this was not a non-story, right? Because it was out there. And what if this did matriculate into something where Caleb Williams did decide to find a way to not be drafted by the Bears 2 years ago? It would be a huge story. And it's something that I don't think you could ignore. It was also a story, and he clarified this, that he didn't know how to watch film. Now, he said that was taken out of context in a lot of ways, where he more so meant he didn't know how to be efficient in ways that he was watching film. And Ben Johnson answered that question a week ago, saying they're going through. He has his process that he's learned through different coaches, and he's going to pass that on to Caleb Williams. He also now has Case Keenum in the quarterback room with him. And I think that is going to be such an important addition to this roster, because a rookie coming in a year ago without a veteran in that room, and you can call Tyson Bagent a veteran. He was in, his second, third year at that time. And he wasn't he hadn't had much gameplay experience. Like, Case Keenum has been through it. He's seen it all with multiple different teams. He can be a coach to Caleb Williams, and it sounds like he already has been, because they are limited in time, Ben Johnson, the coaching staff, with what they can interact with their players. Case Keenum can be that auxiliary guy after practice, later in the evening, to sit down and watch tape with Caleb and tell him what he sees and how to watch it and find the efficient ways, or shortcuts, as he put it, to be more efficient at that.
One of the reasons why he wanted to get in front of this and talk to the media about it yesterday, no matter what the Bears may have told him public relations-wise, I'm sure he said, listen, I need to talk about it because it's not only a distraction for Caleb Williams, it's becoming a distraction for my teammates. And this is a new team. For my head coach, who had to talk on my behalf week 1 of OTA.
Did a great job.
And he did a great job. And I love the fact that he respects his new head coach, the organization, Ryan Poles, from the top on down, Kevin Warren, and everyone else, to the point that, listen, I'm going to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's behind us. I'm a member of the Bears. I can't wait to change the narrative around Chicago Bears quarterbacks. And in regards to Case Keenum, I find it alarming. I was at the NFL owners meetings, and after a number of different interviews, I felt like this was Tyson Bagent's job as the backup quarterback. And now I'm realizing, Ben Johnson said it himself, that there's a battle right now for the backup quarterback
Case Keenum
position.
was the one taking second-team reps yesterday.
He was taking the second-team reps yesterday. And here's a guy in Keenum who's, as you said, played a lot of football games out there over the course of his multi-year career. And he was ready to retire. He didn't even want to come back and play football. And then he met with the Bears organization and was impressed. And now is spending time with Caleb Williams and is tremendously impressed with a kid who has got all the talent in the world and is willing to work at the job, which not many guys that have the talent Caleb Williams has are willing to do.
Well, it was one quote that he said that ever since high school, maybe even before high school, every field that Caleb Williams has stepped onto, he has been by far the best player on the field. So for someone of his talent to be a number one overall pick, but be in a quarterback room with someone like Case Keenum and to still ask questions and try to understand all these different things. He said that holds a lot of weight. Like, he didn't necessarily expect that from Caleb Williams coming in. He said that's been super surprising and refreshing to see. It was also interesting, like, Caleb Williams brought up the Ben Johnson effect in regards to him having his left foot forward, but I think it's like this Ben Johnson effect that we've seen across the board, because you've spoken to him, I've spoken to him. It's this like breath of fresh air where he's like unflappable in all these situations. Even when answering the question about the article a week ago, like he was like, I love it. Like, let's change the narrative. And I think that was kind of translated to Case Keenum too. Like, he meant to have a 15-minute conversation with the head coach. It ended up into an hour-long conversation where they're just talking about life. They're talking about where their kids go to school, where they're going to live. And he's like, I want to play for this guy. And I think Caleb Williams is starting to pick up on that, where whether it's his personality, his coaching style, him changing his footwork, having him under center, he's like, I'm going to buy into this Ben Johnson effect and see where it can take me in this team.
Well, I don't think he has much of a choice. Ben Johnson has a 5-year, $13 million
He's here.
deal that right now he ain't going anywhere. All right, it's Ben Johnson's team. There's a new sheriff in town. I will say this, Wednesday when the media was allowed into the OTA and I was standing on the sideline along with you and our photog, I was really focused in on Ben Johnson. And I watched him bounce around the field with the energy that he bounces around with, the enthusiasm, the intensity. We talked about this last week. But I recall thinking to myself, man, it wasn't long ago where this guy was coaching tight ends in Miami, just trying to get a break. And over the last 3 years, his life has changed. And now I'm watching this young guy, very intelligent, smart coach on the field. It's his. Man, he is the number one. Everyone answers to Ben Johnson, including these $100 million athletes that are on the field. And the respect that they show Ben Johnson, for me, was a bit alarming for a guy who's never been a head coach before. He hasn't won one game as a head coach. Terrific offensive coordinator. We know what he's done the last 3 seasons in Detroit. We know what that Lions offense was like last year. But he commands the room, he commands the field, he commands Hallis Hall right now. And that's leadership we haven't seen from a head coach at Hallis Hall in a long time.
Well, he has a standard, and that's for sure. And we've seen that the first 2 practices, you know, whether it was getting after Cole Kmet because he didn't like how he was lined up 2 weeks ago, or this week it was, I can't even repeat what he said. He didn't like the operation of the huddle. He blew the whistle, called the play dead, and said, figure it out, get it right, let's do it again, because he's not going to let anything go. And that's what these players, you want to say the word?
Well, no, I wasn't going to say the word, but it's interesting you brought that up, because I remember that play, and he turned around and he walked another 3 feet away from the huddle, and he was nodding his head like, this can't happen. All right? Even though it's only the second week of OTAs, there's a new standard at Hallis Hall, which I'm happy to see, because we've sat at training camp and have seen pre-snap penalties, drop footballs, guys going the wrong way.
And they just let the play out.
Right.
It was never even talked about until later in the season when that was showing up on game day, and players are like, can we get coaching around here?
Thank God there's accountability there. We haven't seen accountability in a few years.
And do you think players respond to that the entire season? The being cussed out. It's not just Ben Johnson, it's Eric Bieniemy. I think we're going to see it probably from Dennis Allen. He's a former head coach who's known for being a pretty strict guy and straightforward, old school kind of coach. Like, Do you think that is going to resonate with players? Like, there's two trains of thought, right? You have the old school coach, you have the new school coach. And like, old school is usually the one that's loud, that's in your face. And I know, like, personally, like, that's how I've always responded better, because I think you should have some fear of your head coach, right? And especially when there's money dynamics in this as well. You mentioned the $100 million players. Like, that's always an interesting dynamic, because Ben Johnson's making a ton of money, but still not as much money as these players who walk around and are like, I can do whatever I want.
Still not as much as Montez Sweat, who, by the way, Montez Sweat is at organized team activities, which isn't mandatory. But he is there because he knows he should be there. He wasn't happy with the way last season ended. He wasn't happy with the way he played. You know what? It works when you win. So he has to win. And for a year, it can work whether they win or lose. But after that, you have to win. And if he wins, he can air lash guys as much as he wants. If he doesn't win, I think at some point for veterans in this league, they look at him and they say, you're a joke. We get it that you're trying to plant your flag. It ain't working. You got to win.
Yeah. I thought the other interesting comment was in reference to the Albert Breer report about them working on Caleb Williams' body language as well as pre-snap procedure. And I thought it kind of played into Ben Johnson's personality. He said, we don't want to be a palms-up team that shows a sign of weakness. You know, if Caleb Williams runs a play, it doesn't work, he's looking to the sign like what was that? Like, he's like, we will not show that at all. That, to me, is preparation, that he is going to make sure that his quarterback knows exactly, you know, what defense he's seeing, what fronts he's seeing, where he needs to be looking for different motions, et cetera. And he even talked about length of play calls. He's like, right now, they might be a little bit long. We're going to see how much he can handle. Maybe we shorten them down. And then maybe it's a little bit of a hybrid in the season. Like, he is fully trying to make sure Caleb Williams is in the best position possible to operate this offense. And these are like minor details that we haven't really discussed with other head coaches before.
I love the fact that he's gone through game tape from last season and spliced together game tape that showed Caleb Williams at his worst, showed Caleb Williams with his faults, not only throwing interceptions, but body language, as you touched on, and how the leader of the offense, who is the quarterback, really dictates the rest of the body language of those other 10 guys on offense, and that he can't end up with his palms up complaining to referees or looking at the sideline saying, hey, how come you guys didn't get the ball in or get the play call in sooner so I could get to the line of scrimmage and not be called for a delay again. I think it's great. I love the way he's handling everything right now. You know, listen, we've got truly minicamp next week. I think it's a big deal. 3 straight days of mandatory minicamp. Everyone's there already. I saw even at Big Bill. Andrew Billings was there yesterday.
He was back on the field. That was great
Love to see him there. We don't know if Kyler Gordon will be there. I know that Kyler Gordon and TJ Edwards are suffering with soft tissue injuries. But all these players respect Ben Johnson to the point, and again, it's his first year, that they're showing up even though it's not mandatory.
And he has a lot of humility, too. So, for example, a couple weeks ago, he said he needed to work on his body language, which now we know goes hand in hand with him helping with his players' body language. And he also said that applies to DJ Moore, because that's a player we talked about body language plenty of times last year. He's like, no, this is not just a Caleb Williams thing. This is an entire team thing. Who are we going to be as a team? What is our identity going to be? And as he had said, it's like they're not going to show that sign of weakness. There's also some humility, and I appreciate this because I don't know if it was Sylvie who, at the end of the press conference last week, he was like, God, I love this guy, like jokingly after he walked off, because he nailed it, right? He addressed the Caleb Williams article, and he aced the test of how he wanted to handle that. So then walking off this week, Ben Johnson said, God, I love these guys.
Oh, he did?
Yes, he did.
I love it. I love that he recognizes that we have a job to do. All right. And I asked someone in public relations, and they said he has been a joy to work with. Again, Cassie, it's the off season.
I know.
All right. This team goes through another 10-game losing streak. It's awful then. Suddenly, all those great moments that took place during OTAs and potentially minicamp and training camp, no one cares about anymore, because we've all, Bears fans out there, the media, we've lived through the Bears winning the offseason and then have had bad regular season.
Which is why we take everything we see with a grain of salt. For example, Caleb Williams threw 2 interceptions this week at OTAs. Tremaine Edmonds picked him off. Jaquan Brisker picked him off, which is great to see Brisker back active on the field and on that defense. And then, you're looking at different ways that they're working, specifically the offensive line, because we know the interior is set with every guy that they brought in and signed. Now it's like, all right, left tackle, we thought Karan Amagaji got the 1 reps week 1 at left tackle. This week, it's Ozzie Trapillo. And I was actually kind of surprised by that. I thought it was going to take a little bit longer for Trapillo to actually get the chance to get those reps with the first team. But they're using it as musical chairs right now, Ben Johnson said, until Braxton Jones comes back. And that's going to probably be training camp where pads come on, and that's time for someone to win that job. But I got the sense that they're not too high on Karan Amagaji. And as a 3rd-round pick a year ago, came into a tough situation, dealt with an injury. I'm not so sure he got the coaching fundamentals that he needed in his first year. And now he's kind of thrown into the fire like, hey, can you be our starting left tackle? And it's like almost a similar situation as he was with the Vikings, where it's like, is this guy in a fair position? And is he ready to handle that yet? Then you have Ozzie Trapillo, who's drafted in the 2nd round, and I think everyone's like 6'8". This guy is massive. He's smart. Like, he can probably handle that. And you put him there to start. Maybe we feel a little bit better about that. Or maybe it's Braxton Jones again.
Amagaji, don't forget, missed all of last year's offseason camp. So he wasn't healthy enough, and he missed, his senior season as well at Yale. So he wasn't healthy enough until the middle of last season. So really, this is his rookie year, if you're going to be honest about Karan Amagaji. And I'm a bit surprised like you were, because to me, if it's his rookie season, then he needs as many snaps during OTAs as possible. And Ozzie Trapillo shouldn't be out there unless the coach, the offensive line coach, Dan Rasher, had some doubts about the play of Karan Amagaji, because they've looked at film. They've looked at what he looked like, Amagaji, while he was out there last year.
Not their guy either. Not
their guy either.
Guy.
Exactly. While Trapillo is, and Trapillo, had a good season last year, 2nd-round draft pick. Maybe you get him out there as much as possible. We don't know how this coaching staff feels about Braxton Jones, who's coming back off the ankle surgery. I don't think they're serious about moving Darnell Wright from the right to the left
He
side.
left it open at the end, but the way that he was talking early on in the press conference, I was like, and from all we've seen, Darnell Wright being at right tackle, although he did get blown by a couple times by Dom Robinson. And Ben
what's
Johnson,
that all about? Dominique Robinson.
It's his last chance.
This is his last chance, man. But you know what? I've seen Dominique Robinson now for a couple of years look good during training camp and the preseason, and even game 1. Remember, he had 2 sacks in that first game, and then was invisible the rest of the season. So it was nice that Dominique Robinson. I'm glad you brought up Jaquan Brisker, one of the nicest guys. I was on a golf course with Brisker once. First time that I actually had spent some time away from the football field, away from the locker room with him. And what a true gentleman, just a different personality from on the field to on the golf course. Just a great guy.
Scratch golfer?
Well, I don't know if he's a scratch golfer. All right, but I'll say this. This guy is hungry. Remember, played in only 5 games last year. And here's a guy who loves the game of football and is worried about his career now. Mm-hmm. I mean,
playing for his contract.
Too many concussions over the course of his career. And you're right. He just saw Kyler Gordon get a new extension. He's up for an extension. But if you're the Bears, you can't take that chance yet until you can make sure he can get through an entire season healthy.
I mean, both safeties are kind of in the same position right now, because even Kevin Byard talked about that last week. He's like...
Last year of his deal.
How old is he now? He's like 30-something years old. He's like, I know I'm older. He's like, I'm playing essentially for a daily contract at this point in his career, and he's grateful for it all. But like, both those safety positions, your starting safeties, like, you don't know if they're going to be there in another year, which is why it was surprising, I think, when the Bears went through the draft and people are like, are they going to draft another safety that could back them up? So, like, that's a position that you're looking at depth-wise, like, who could fill into that spot? Because we historically have not seen Jaquan Brisker finish out an entirety of a season. Like, that is what history has told us in the past. Like, he's had a ton of concussions, and that's a serious concern. And I think that the Bears are well aware of that, and I think Byard and Brisker are also well aware of the situation.
I think it's easier to find for the Bears a safety on the safety open market than it is a cornerback. So I think that the Bears, and there are a number of players that potentially could become available if the Bears, let's hope that the Bears don't need one. They don't need to dip into that safety market at the end of the preseason before the regular season starts. But a guy like Byard, veteran, I love the veteran leadership that's been brought to this team, whether it's Grady Jarrett on the defensive side of the football or on the offensive side with Joe Thuney. There's leadership that this team has now that they have not had in years.
Anyone else, anything else stand out from week 2 of
No,
OTAs?
it was good to see Ruben Hippolyte out there on the football field as well. JP's last name?
Richardson.
JP Richardson, number 2. This guy has got wheels.
Yeah, he's fast.
I don't know if you saw him catch that short
Crossing
pass.
route,
Yep, the crossing route, and nobody could catch him. And you can't teach speed.
No, you can't. That's one of my favorite lines in sports.
Mine as well. So he's a guy that actually opened my eyes. We talked about Trapillo, and we saw Noel Sewell out there as well. So it's been a good couple of weeks for OTAs, but I'm really jacked about next week's minicamp because for 3 straight days it's mandatory, and you feel like Ben Johnson's going to pick the intensity up a level.
And because it's mandatory minicamp next week, that last OTA, it is optional. A lot of times the veterans, they don't show up for that. They start their summer early. So really it's the last time we're going to see everyone on the field before things start training camp.
How about this?
July 14th?
The Lions don't even have a mandatory minicamp.
Really?
Yeah, we talked about it with Dan Miller. It's something that their head coach does not feel strongly about, and they don't even have a mandatory minicamp.
Do people show up for OTAs?
They show up they show up when Dan Campbell tells them to show up, and that's been obvious. And you're right, they were all in camp at OTA.
All right, Lou Canellis, thanks for coming on the show.
Love it. Thanks for having me on.
For extended interviews and previous episodes, make sure to check out The Offseason on Fox Local or the Fox 32 YouTube page. And The Offseason is now available on Spotify, Odyssey, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.